Councilmember Garcia.
Here.
Councilmember Kennedy. Here. Councilmember Baez. Mayor Pro Tem McEachern.
Here.
Mayor Cox.
Thank you, Mayor Cox. We have 4 closed session items tonight. They're all set forth on the agenda. 3 are existing litigation in accordance with Government Code 54956.9 D1. The names and titles of the cases are set forth on the agenda. The 4th item is a anticipated litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9 D1, and it pertains to one potential piece of litigation. To the extent there is reportable action, we will report it either at the conclusion of the closed session or at the commencement of the 6 o'clock meeting.
My mic is on. I'm sorry you couldn't hear me back there, but everybody up here could hear. So we will adjourn to executive session at this time. Thank you. You want me to read it? I'll be glad to.
Ordinance of the City Council of the City of Victorville approving Amendment DEV 13-00002, an amendment to Title 13, Title 16, and Title 17 of the Victorville Municipal Code, including but not limited to the following: indoor mini-mall regulation, shopping cart regulations, and landscape maintenance assessment district standards.
Move for adoption and waiver of further reading.
There's a motion to introduce by Mayor Pro Tem McEachern, second by Councilmember Kennedy. Motion carries unanimously.
Item B2 is also a public hearing. It's a public hearing called to hear arguments for and against approving General Plan Amendment DEV 13-00003, the housing element update, and introducing ordinance number 2304, entitled, and I'm going to go ahead and read it, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Victorville approving Amendment Development 13-0003 and amendment to the Victorville General Plan to update the housing element to coincide with the Regional Transportation Plan with an environmental exemption. I don't have any cards. I do not have any cards in regard to that item. I'm going to open the public hearing at this time. If anyone wants to speak for or against the introduction of this ordinance, seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. There's no questions of staff or no staff comments. Ready for a motion, I believe.
Motion to introduce by Councilmember Baez, second by Councilmember Garcia. Motion carries unanimously.
Next item is the consent calendar, which is C1 through C8. Is there any reason not to consider these in one motion?
I need to abstain from C1 as I was absent last meeting.
Then we will have C2, C2 through C8, and then we'll come back, take a separate action on C1.
Or I could just note in the minutes
You
that
could just note it?
Yes.
Okay, very good. I'm sorry. Then we'll take a motion for the whole thing.
Motion by Mayor Pro Tem McEachern, second by Councilmember Kennedy.
So do I vote yes?
You can vote yes, and I will just note on that one item that you are abstaining.
Okay.
Motion carries unanimously.
Next item is written communications. Item D1, a request, Southern California Logistics Airport Authority Board to adopt resolution number SCLIA 13-005 entitled, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Southern California Logistics Airport Authority authorizing investment of monies in the Local Agency Investment Fund. Motion and a second.
Motion by Councilmember Baez, second by Councilmember Garcia. Motion carries unanimously.
Written communications D2. Request Victorville Water District Board approve the sale of APN 0477-122-03 to the Wan Zhao Dong, and that Chairman Cox execute all the related documents.
Mr. Mayor, just have a question on this. I think I probably know the answer, but for something this small, how do we know that price is good? Do we do an appraisal or for $13,000?
Mr. McGlade, if you could come up and explain that.
Evening, council members. The appraisal was done by the property owner. He had probably, I think it was 3 different appraisals done. They were averaged out. That was the median. It just wasn't cost effective for us to do another appraisal for such a small piece of property, which is surplus property for the district.
Thank you.
Motion by Councilmember Vyas, second by Councilmember Kennedy. Motion carries unanimously.
Item D3, there was no item submitted. Item D4 did not have an item. D5, request the Southern California Logistics Airport Authority, SCLA Board, 1, ratify the acceptance of the grant agreement, 3, 06-0359-021-2013, grant number 21 between the United States of America acting through the Federal Aviation Administration and the SCLA in the amount of $5,679,169 for runway 321 reconstruction project. 2, approve an additional appropriation of revenue in the amount of $1,899,169. And 3, approve an additional appropriation for related expenditures in the amount of $1,899,169 from the FAA grant funds and $211,019 from the airport operational funds.
Motion by Mayor Pro Tem McEachron, second by Councilmember Garcia.
By the way, thanks to the staff for the work on this and receiving that grant. This is a good thing.
Councilmember Garcia, may I get a vote from you? Motion carries unanimously.
Item D6, request Southern California Logistics Airport Authority, SCLA Board award a construction contract to Baldy Brothers, Inc. for the BASA bid and bid alternative number 1 of the runway 321 reconstruction project number CC 14-007 in the amount of $5,707,378.
I had a question.
Question?
The bids actually are up at $17 million, and we're just approving the first 2 phases of 5.7. It's safe to assume that we're going to get the funds needed to complete all the phases?
Staff, given the experience we've had working with the FAA, believes that that's a good assumption. Of course, assuming the same kind of funding comes out of FAA, of course, we're watching daily as to what happens with the transportation bill and the FAA reauthorization bills. But assuming funding levels stay similar, we feel now, especially since we've gotten through the success of designing the project, and of course now getting into the first phase, or actually the first 2 phases of the construction of the overall runway system, it's going to be hard for the FAA, I believe, along with the airport manager believes, for them to say that they cannot continue to finish the runway system. This award is dealing with runway 321, which is your crosswind runway. It's about 10,000 feet of runway system. And this is dealing with a, shouldn't say a small area, but it's certainly not the entire length of the 10,000 feet. And we have some very critical issues that need to be addressed throughout the entire length. So to address just a part of it would really work against what the FAA's overall goal is, and that is to ensure that we have a safe operating environment that's meeting today's current FAA standards.
I would have thought the first phase would be to demolish the entire existing runway, and maybe phase 2 is do some foundational work, but that's not how it'll go.
No, in fact, that'd likely be a much more expensive proposition. But there's actually some good material out there in certain sections. There's certainly a lot of failing material, but largely grinding it down and rebuilding it up.
And they will have to go all the way down to the dirt.
In some
And-
cases, I believe that's the case because
And
found
below
some, yeah, we found some sections that weren't constructed with proper base material.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, it's interesting to note, and I appreciate Mayor Cox's comment about the good staff work on this. This additional appropriation, these additional grant funds actually are the result of another airport, San Francisco International Airport, being unable to complete their portion, and therefore they had to relinquish those funds, and we were able to obtain them. There's actually a couple of more airports, and speaking with Mr. Metzler, who may be struggling as well, so we may be in line for additional grant funds sooner rather than later as a result of the good work of our staff.
I think that's great. That's certainly due diligence on the part of the staff to keep track of those things, and so good work again.
I don't like flying to San Francisco, so that's now the reason I'll never go there again.
Worry about the runways.
Okay, we need a motion and a second.
Motion by Councilmember Garcia, second by Councilmember Kennedy. Motion carries unanimously.
Agenda item D7, request Southern California Logistics Airport Authority, SCLA, Board award a professional services contract to Parsons Brinkerhoff, Inc. for the construction, management, and inspection for the base bid and bid alternative number 1 of the Runway 321 Reconstruction Project CC 14-007 in the amount of $602,810.56. Staff, is this construction management, is this something that we went to bid on? Did I recall?
We did go through a competitive professional services
Okay.
few years ago, 2-3 years ago, when we started the initial process to get the funding for the overall runway project. So as we got towards the completion of the design engineering, then we went back to among the three, the one selected firm to actually get a competitive price from them. But they did go through an original process.
Okay, no questions.
And just to address how the math works, collectively, the project is about $6.3 million. 10% of that would be funded via match. So when you take the product of the construction contract and this construction management contract, the math actually works out to be about $6.3 million.
Well, it's probably a dumb question on my part, but when you're talking a project that large that takes specialty construction and those people that are providing the contract services, is 10% within the ballpark? Is that about normal? Is that a little high? Is that low? Do you know?
The CM actually represents closer to 7%, so we feel it's fairly competitive, especially compared to past experiences we've had. And then
The whole project or just phase 1 and 2?
Phase one and 2, correct. And then I think it's important to note that in this case, the construction management firm will work very closely with our airport manager and also our civil engineer.
Motion by Councilmember Kennedy, second by Councilmember Vyas. Motion carries unanimously.
Agenda item D8, under written communications, request the Southern California Logistics Airport Authority, SCLA Board, 1, ratify the acceptance of the grant agreement 3-06-0359-022-2013, grant number 22, between the United States of America acting through the Federal Aviation Administration and the SCLA in the amount of $153,000 for the wildlife hazard assessment project. 2, approve an additional appropriation of revenue and expenditures from the WHA grant in the amount of $153,000. And 3, approve an additional appropriation in the amount of $17,000 for the local match.
Motion by Mayor Pro Tem McEachron, second by Councilmember Vyas. Motion carries unanimously.
Mr. Mayor, on D9, I'm going to abstain because the second portion of this includes appropriation of brokerage commission fees, which would go to Bradco, and they're a client of mine.
Mr. McEachran will leave the dais and leave the council chambers. Item D9, request Southern California Logistics Airport Authority Board approve, 1, entering into a standard lease agreement between Southern California Aviation LLC and SCLA to lease buildings 780 and 789, increasing unbudgeted revenue in the amount of $63,138.95, and 2, approve an additional appropriation in the amount of $20,073.21 for brokerage commission fees. Any questions of the staff or any comments from staff? Being none?
Mr. Chairman, I'll just add that this item is brought to your attention after having had the property on the market for some time. The market was slow to respond in that this building has been on, actually these buildings have been on the market for what feels like over a year. And in this particular case, this is a case where ironically we were dealing with a negotiation amongst two interested parties at the same time, so we actually did get into a very competitive negotiation to where what we did end up negotiating represented a full list price. So effectively what we were asking for as the listing, we got the full list without any concessions. So from that perspective, we were pleased at the staff level with this transaction.
Any comments from council members? If not, chair is ready for a motion.
Motion by Councilmember Kennedy, second by Councilmember Garcia. Motion carries with Mayor Pro Tem McEachran absent.
Notify Mr. McEachran he can return to the chambers. This is item E1, public comments on items of interest. I do have a card from Deanne W. DeLeon to address the council.
My name is Deanne W. Deline.
Pull the microphone down.
Say that again.
Deanne Deline.
Deline, okay.
Deline, yes. I'm a retired teacher. I taught for 47 years. Been retired for 4 years. I am bored, so I decided to get back into something to do with the city I live in. I've been to plenty of Board of Education meetings, but never that I can remember a city council meeting. I was very political as a young child, grew up that way as a teenager, stuck my nose in the book to become a teacher, and raised my family, so now I'm ready to do it again. I gave the city clerk an envelope on September the 5th, and she stated she gave it to you, each of the city council, white envelope. In the white envelope was a cover letter about what was inside. Inside were 2 videos that you can watch. One came from England. Yes, this one's from England, giving us a warning of citizens of the United States what will be happening to our country if we keep on doing what we're doing. And this is from local people. It's Agenda 21. It's the law. It was signed into law, I think, in 2008. It is easy to read if you read the margin. I read the margin, I read the whole thing, and now I'm reading it again. I know it's a lot of homework. I understand it's homework. And it's just a reminder from a teacher, please do your homework. And as I'm reading it now, I'm underlining things I see in it. I was fortunate enough to take law classes. I didn't want to become a lawyer, but I had plenty of relatives that were lawyers and kept trying to get me to become a lawyer. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to teach. And I'm just here to remind you to please read the book, see the videos. I do not know which members voted to have all this done in the city of Victorville, but I do know we have some new members. Angela, I know, is a new member of the city council, and I'd like you to reread it, see what you've read if you didn't read it before, see if there's anything else that you can gather from it. Thank you.
Thank you. I do not have any additional cards. I don't have anyone approaching the podium, and therefore we will conclude our public comment section. Discussions and possible actions regarding items for the upcoming City Council agenda.
I'm just curious, when you think we will see a report on the golf course operation, Doug?
I know that staff has had 2 monthly meetings with the golf course operators, one just last week, and have seen some progress. I don't know, Mr. Metzler, do you have a time frame for when you want to bring that back to the council for a report to show progress?
We could probably do it at the next council meeting.
There you
Good.
go. Right.
Thank you.
Just a comment to the staff. We now have the La Mesa Nisqually interchange open, and well, I've gotten a lot of favorable comments in regard to automobile usage of that, and particularly the change it made in Bear Valley Road. I know our engineer, Sean McGlade, he had, I think, 2 people assigned to that project. They initiated that project in the city, followed it all the way through, and so I'm sure it's a proud moment for you and your staff. Sean, thank you. Reports from the city manager.
Just that this Saturday is our Spice of Life festival, fall festival. We've changed it up a little bit this year. As you recall, during the budget process, we budgeted a little bit more part-time staffing to make this more of a city staff run event, managing it with volunteers essentially running the event. It caused, in some ways, although we appreciate the help and we still receive a lot of help from volunteers, it's just a little bit more efficient simply having staff do the nuts and bolts of the event. So this year it's changing a little bit. It's got a large kids zone with bounce houses, all free, face painting, clowns, a climbing wall even. There's also going to be a food court with snacks. It runs from 10 until 2 o'clock right here in the Civic Center. There's over 200 vendors that will be on site, as well as a stage with acts all day long. Hope to see everyone come out to enjoy.
Is there an antique auto show?
I would have to defer to the mayor on whether or not there's an antique auto show this year. I don't know that there is. I seem to recall last year, or perhaps it was the year before, some complaints about the wind and the antique autos being sandblasted.
I think the council could pass a resolution prohibiting wind this Saturday just for the Spice of Life event.
That would be great. That would be great.
Reports from council members? Reports? At this point in time?
Well,
Okay.
I appreciate you bringing up La Mesa Nisqually. I was going to mention that, but again, thank you to staff and everyone who was involved in that and getting that open. And since there's bounce houses on Saturday, and I will bring my kids over to make sure that they can take advantage of that. But I did want to just remind the mayor that on Saturday, the Arizona State Sun Devils beat the USC Trojans 62-41.
You saw what happened to Lane Kiffin.
I wanted to make sure that that you knew that, since you attended USC and I went to ASU.
Just really appreciate that, Ron.
And I would ask our city
Really
attorney to
appreciate
reserve his comments about UCLA because it's not important.
That's right. It's just totally unimportant. I'm just at a loss of words. Should have let Mr. Kiffin go some time ago. Comments from other council members? As an item, I know we have the golf course report that's coming. I'm told that because of a potential conflict that I cannot be involved in that decision-making. I'd certainly like to have a copy of the report or be brief because I'm simply asked by so many people. And so, Mr. Attorney,
you are allowed to receive.
Excuse me, I've heard a completely conflicting view on that, and I'm going to ask the city attorney to talk to the authority that I spoke with who was a party of that, and he believes the conclusion was entirely different than that, that we're not prohibited. That's
I'd sure like
the
to
conclusion, and
know.
I'd like the city attorney
We will give
to
you an
handle it.
formal opinion. We believe you are conflicted out because of the proximity of your properties to the golf course and the current FPPC, application of the FPPC rules. And we have looked for exceptions. We do not find any. I'd like to definitely discuss whatever authority it is that you believe would exempt you.
I would really like to get that because I am asked by a lot of people and just can't respond, and people get very frustrated because I don't respond.
You are able to receive the information. You cannot deliberate or participate in the decision-making or in any way influence the decision-making process. That's really what the restriction is.
Well, at least I wanted the knowledge of what's occurring.
That information will be public information, I would suspect.
Second item is, I read an article in the newspaper, and this goes to the city attorney, that apparently there's been a lawsuit between Palmdale and Lancaster in regard to the voting at large for council people or voting from wards. And the judges issued, if I understand it, an order saying they can't proceed with the election unless they do it by a ward system. And I had mentioned this a few months ago, that this was probably coming. I had been reminded that Victorville, this might come to Victorville. We sat down and went over the representation that we've had in Victorville over the years, and at least the individual that was threatening that lawsuit really backed away, because there has been good representation from the time this city was incorporated. And there has been no evidence whatsoever that women or minorities have been prohibited from holding office at the council. And we've had a history of that. So it may be that this was a hollow threat, but from an individual who wanted to be on the council and felt that was a good way to do it. Some cities have had an opposite reaction, and according to what was printed in the paper, the judge's ruling was simply, that is the requirement of the laws approved by the legislature of the state of California. I would like for you to advise the council, no rush, but when it's convenient to do so, on whether or not we may be affected or not, and what does that law say, because most cities have not are elected by wards, and there have been ample evidence that it's having an opposite effect of what the legislature hoped it would have. It's worked against the very thing that they said they wanted to see accomplished. So if there's no objections, we'll do that at some future date, and at this point, we're going to adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much for coming and participating. You all have a good evening.